Hi, these comments are for PB, and I am Michael, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the 7-step system to pass the Toefl IBT. You are one of my Toefl writing bootcamp course students, Hua, and I'm doing an error correction of an essay that you sent me, I think, yesterday. So first of all, if we look at the rubrics, let me look at them this way here. So, yeah, I'm thinking in the high 3 area. It says here, addresses a topic and task using somewhat developed explanations, examples, and or details. So I think that's one of the areas you can improve on. Connection of ideas may be occasionally obscured. I think you can improve your thesis statement. And you have some minor errors, but not that many, believe it or not. So the good news is, with some slight changes, maybe developing the body paragraphs a bit more, creating a more sharply focused thesis, I think that you definitely can score much higher pretty quickly here. So I'm estimating right now you're around 3.75 out of 5, so maybe 23 to 24 points out of 30, I think, for the TOEFL. That would be what your range is right now. Now, I know you might be doing the IELTS exam, so I think whatever the changes you make based on my suggestions, it's going to help improve your score in both tests, whichever one you take. Okay, so the next thing is, let's take a look at your essay. Right, so let's do the grammar corrections first, and then I'm going to do some of the structural issues. Okay, in present-day society, so I'm going to throw a comma there, introductory prepositional phrases are typically set apart with a comma. In present-day society, many students cannot afford to rent their own apartments. Thus, a shared apartment with a roommate I'm going to add that A in there, in a dormitory I'm going to put the only feasible option. As much as living with another human might bring about some challenges, it is worth to identify the most important qualities of this person that help make it easier. Okay, but what we need there is a thesis. We'll do that later. Respecting each other's privacy is of paramount significance when it comes to living. I'm going to put in shared accommodations. While living with someone is characterized by sharing many areas of life. Now notice how you said while living with and then there. You can't do that. This is called a misplaced modifier. Why is that? If you say while living, well, you could say while roommates live with someone. You could say here, roommates will always, how about this? So while living with someone is characterized by sharing many areas of life, roommates will always have private aspects of life which should not be invaded by, let's just change this to other people. So what you can learn here is you can't reduce an adverb clause only if the subject in the dependent clause is the same as the subject in the independent clause. For example, making sure that roommates' belongings are not used without his permission is a crucial element of respecting each other. Furthermore, not listening to, I'm going to just put loud music. Music, I look at it as an uncount noun. Not listening to loud music or keeping maybe the main lights off during the night are other instances of showing respect to each other. Second, willingness to share household responsibilities is a desirable trait. There are plenty of chores that need to be completed on a regular basis. Otherwise, the living space will get extremely untidy. Okay, here's a problem here. You have that comma and you're connecting separate sentences. If you do the semicolon, I think it will work. You can use a semicolon to connect independent clauses together, right? It is possible. But you can't use the comma to connect those. You might say something like, there are plenty of chores that need to be completed on a regular basis, comma, or a living space will get extremely untidy. So if you put the comma, you can put or in there. That creates what's called a compound sentence. And the comma is used right before the coordinating conjunction. And then you would scrap or delete this word otherwise. Therefore, the inhabitants of a dorm must be willing to come to agreement. I'm going to put that preposition in there on how to share those tasks. For example, one of them will throw garbage away and clean dishes, whereas the other would look after plants and kitchen. Last but not least, living together under one roof requires a great deal of flexibility. In other words, not everything can be foreseen or projected. Thus, some situation will require mutual understanding and empathy. Okay, so this is the same problem you had before. This is called a comma splice. Go to Google. What is a comma splice? But what if you did this? You could put a semicolon here and then say thus, or you can change this to so. In other words, not everything can be foreseen or projected, comma, so some situations will require mutual understanding and empathy. The illustration to this could be one of my roommates extending his very intimate date with his girlfriend at a dorm beyond what was agreed upon. Well, he could be reminded by his friend that time is over, choosing not to do it. And you can't use the comma here because if you say choosing not to do it, that's what's called a gerund phrase, and you don't want to separate that subject from the verb. So choosing not to do it would demonstrate flexibility and empathy. Certainly, living with another person in a dormitory will not be as easy as renting one's own accommodation. Nevertheless, having a roommate who demonstrates the aforementioned traits will make this adventure smoother. Yeah, I don't know. I think partly your sentence style is going to kill you here. So I'm going to put this down to 3.5 to 22. I think you have to do a little bit better with your sentence style. Let me go back here and see what it says here. You have... Yeah, may display accurate but limited range of syntactic structures. I think this is another problem I didn't really realize, right? So your sentences are kind of short, right? So you need to create more of these connecting type words. You know, I put the word so in there and things like that, and you can use some noun clause, noun, adjective, and adverb clause connectors. I think that might be a good strategy. Okay, so yeah, I think that my score is pretty accurate here. So the next step is let's go through each paragraph and do some structural changes. That's my next option. This is the introduction that you wrote, which is roughly 56 words. Here is an edited version of your introduction, and it is 105 words. So you want to get started, I think, with this academic writing where you raise a topic a little bit more than you did. So notice I added information in the beginning, and then I put a specific thesis at the end here to help connect this to your body paragraphs. So you can see what you wrote. Let's compare. In present-day society, after finishing high school, many students may decide to attend colleges in order to increase their chances of getting higher paying jobs. In these cases, these college-bound students will need to make many decisions which will profoundly affect their chances for academic success. Since these students have many expenses, some will not be able to rent their own apartments. Thus, a shared room with a roommate in a dormitory is the only feasible option. Inasmuch as living with another human might bring about some challenges, respect, sharing responsibilities, and being respectful are the most important qualities roommates must possess. So this is something that I want you to work on a little bit more. Notice how I have a 27-word sentence there. In the beginning here, we have a 24-word sentence. Your sentences tend to be a little bit short, at least for academic writing. So I think that's something that you want to consider to help strengthen your writing, especially academic writing, is to have longer sentences. Now, don't make them 100 words or anything like that, but anywhere from 20 to 30 words is usually a pretty healthy written sentence, right? So that's the introduction, the changes I would make there. In your first body paragraph, you definitely have a topic sentence. So notice how the thesis we created here, it ties in here. Respecting each other's privacy is of paramount significance when it comes to living in shared accommodations. While living with someone is characterized by sharing many areas of life, roommates will always have private aspects of life which should not be invaded by other people. For example, making sure that roommate's belongings are not used without his permission is a crucial element of respecting each other. But to me, this isn't really a good example. It's more of a general idea. But what if you did this? You said not listening is also, to me, you're bringing up another idea without developing it. But what if you said this? This is where you provide the example. So you say, for instance, last semester I lived with a roommate who respected my personal effects. On one occasion, he needed a black pair of shoes so he could attend a formal gathering with his professor and classmates in his managerial accounting class. On the weekend of his gathering, even though I was visiting my parents in another city, my roommate had asked me in advance if he could borrow those shoes. Of course, I was glad to lend him the shoes, and I was appreciative that he respected my personal belongings. Now we have a little bit more depth. So we put the for instance after the general statement, and then we give that specific instance. So your paragraph was roughly 86 words, right? So I think you need to do a little bit better than that. You need a little more depth than that, and that's exactly what this paragraph does. So now we're over 150 words, and we take time to develop this detail. This is important. You need to show you can take a topic and talk about it in some depth. In looking at your second body paragraph, I've expanded this one. So you're at 74 words. I more than doubled the length of that paragraph to show more depth and progression of ideas there. So you can kind of see here, we are at 169 words on this paragraph. Now, if you feel like it's just too much and you don't have enough time to do all this in 30 minutes, your strategy is to just focus on two reasons, but spend about 150 words developing each of those reasons, and then try to get more specific with the examples that you provide. Okay, so you can see what you wrote here. Okay, here's what I wrote. I put, secondly, a willingness to share responsibilities is a desirable roommate trait. I'm going to make this into an adjective and not even a possessive S there. Plenty of chores. Let's get rid of this. I got rid of that there are thing. The it and their sentences, these are considered weak. Plenty of chores need to be completed on a regular basis. Otherwise, a living space would get extremely untidy. Therefore, the inhabitants of a dorm must be willing to come to an agreement on how to share those tasks. And this is what I did. This is your example. That's 21 words. No. That's not enough, right? How about this example? 118 words. What has more progression of ideas? My example, right? Says, for example, I'm living with 3 roommates while I'm attending a university in Canada. We live in an apartment with a living room, 2 bathrooms, and 3 bedrooms. To help keep our living spaces clean and orderly, my roommates and I agreed on creating a calendar that lists each person's job tasks on a weekly basis. The chores center around the following responsibilities: kitchen, living room, bathrooms, bedrooms, and garbage. In addition, at the end of the month, the chores change, and each roommate is given a new set of chores. Fortunately, since we're all responsible, we keep our apartment immaculate so when guests come over, they'll not be offended by an unsightly mess. Right there. So that's what I would do there, is to just take more time on the details. You need to pay attention to those details. So with your third body paragraph, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to take your idea and develop it a little bit more, right? So this is what you wrote. Here is my edited version. Last but not least, living together under one roof requires a great deal of flexibility. In other words, not everything can be foreseen or projected, so some situations will require mutual understanding and empathy. To illustrate, suppose a roommate has an intimate date with his girlfriend in a dorm. As a result, he tells his roommate that he and his girlfriend will be hanging out till 10:30 p.m. However, while he spends time with his girlfriend, she and he may decide to hang out until 11:30 p.m., especially since the girl needs to discuss the logistics of their upcoming visit at her parents' house. Hopefully, the roommate will be flexible enough to allow his roommate to spend one hour more without conflict, thereby demonstrating flexibility. So that's what I would do there. So instead of 82 words, we now have closer to 125. So we're adding another 50 essentially. And you remember what I said a minute ago? If you, well, Michael, I can't do that in 30 minutes. Then just focus on 2 reasons. So we can get rid of this, and we're going to take a look at the conclusion, and then we are done with this. So I think overall, I think we can get you on track pretty quickly with the writing. The good thing is you have great control over your language use. The only thing that you need to do is you need a little bit better syntactic variety and longer sentences. That would be one of my main points of suggestions for your writing. You say, certainly living with another person in a dormitory will not be as easy as renting maybe one's own accommodation. Nevertheless, having a roommate who demonstrates the aforementioned traits will make this adventure smoother. Okay, so that's fine. You don't have to do a lot of crazy things in the introduction. I mean, in the conclusion. You can do what you did. Just tie up the loose ends. Now, what do we have here? We have about 584 words there. If you get rid of one of your paragraphs, right, then you're going to be down to about 520 something, which is also fine. Okay, let's read the whole thing one more time, and I'm going to go over what I call my analysis of your writing, and I will suggest specific lessons in my online course to help you advance your writing proficiency and to improve your writing score on either the Toefl or the IELTS exams. Okay, in present-day society, after finishing high school, many students may decide to attend colleges in order to increase their chances of getting higher-paying jobs. In these cases, these college-bound students will need to make many decisions which will profoundly affect their chances for academic success. Since these students have many expenses, some will not be able to afford to rent their own apartments. Thus, a shared room with a roommate in a dormitory is the only feasible option. Inasmuch as living with another human might bring about some challenges, respect, sharing responsibilities, and being respectful are the most important qualities roommates must possess. Respecting each other's privacy is of paramount significance when it comes to living in shared accommodations. While living with someone is characterized by sharing many areas of life, roommates will always have private aspects of life which should not be invaded by other people. Making sure that roommates' belongings are not used without permission is a crucial element of respecting each other. For instance, last year I lived with a roommate who respected my personal effects. On one occasion, he needed a black pair of shoes so he could attend a formal gathering with his professor and classmates in his managerial accounting class. On the weekend of his gathering, even though I was visiting my parents in another city, my roommate had asked me in advance if he could borrow those shoes. Of course, I was glad to lend him the shoes, and I was appreciative that he respected my personal belongings. Second, a willingness to share household responsibilities is a desirable roommate trait. Plenty of chores need to be completed on a regular basis, otherwise a living space will get extremely untidy. Therefore, the inhabitants of a dorm must be willing to come to an agreement on how to share those tasks. For example, I am living with 3 roommates while I'm attending a university in Canada. We live in an apartment with a living room, 2 bathrooms, and 3 bedrooms. To help keep our living spaces clean and orderly, my roommates and I agreed on creating a calendar that lists each person's job tasks on a weekly basis. How about list each job task weekly? The chores center around the following responsibilities: kitchen, living room, bathrooms, and bedrooms, and garbage. In addition, at the end of the month, the chores change and each roommate is given a new set of chores. Fortunately, since we are all responsible, we keep our apartment immaculate so when guests come over, they will not be offended by an unsightly mess. Last but not least, living together under one roof requires a great deal of flexibility. In other words, not everything can be foreseen or projected, so some situations will require mutual understanding and empathy. To illustrate, suppose a roommate has an intimate date with his girlfriend at a dorm. Maybe change this to in a dorm. As a result, he tells his roommate that he and his girlfriend will be hanging out until 10:30 p.m. However, while he spends time with his girlfriend, she and he may decide to hang out until 11:30 p.m., especially since the girl needs to discuss the logistics of their upcoming visit at her parents' house. Hopefully, the roommate will be flexible enough to allow his roommate to spend one more hour. Yeah, I think it's better to say it there. Without conflict, thereby demonstrating flexibility. Certainly, living with another person in a dormitory will not be as easy as renting one's own accommodation. Nevertheless, having a roommate who demonstrates the aforementioned traits will make this adventure smoother. Good. So that's what it sounds like when you read it all at the same time. So here we are. This is the 7-step system to pass a Toefl IBT. So the question is, what are the most important lessons you can focus on based on this first essay that you wrote? What are some things you can do that can improve your language use, development, all of those areas? That's what I want to focus on right now. Okay, so let's see here. Vocabulary, I think you're fine. I don't see any major problems there. You seem to have pretty good control over the language. Okay, I'm in the grammar section right now. Okay, I'm going to help you with your syntactic variety, right? So I think Lesson 4, Lesson 4.1, to work with appositives. That's going to help you. Compound sentences, I think, is a good one. Lesson 7, 8, and 9. Noun, adjective, or now how about lesson 6, 7, 8, and 9? Those are good because you learn how to use the complex sentence. Lesson 10, misplaced modifiers. You had that problem in your essay, so I think that's a good one to look at. For your syntactic variety, take a look at lesson 11, subject, verb, inversions. And I don't think there's anything else. You have a few problems with articles, but no matter what we do, you're going to continue to have problems with this. I call them systematic errors. If you want to look at it, you can see what it is. Maybe also 21 prepositions. And then comma splices. You had this at least 2 errors in your writing there. Make sure you understand this. I already talked about it. Lesson 26, sentence variety I think is good. And then 26.2, sentence variety practice exercises. Lesson 27, being more concise. And then lesson 29, the semicolon. Review the punctuation marks in this lesson. That's it. Okay, let's go to the writing part of my course. Let's see if there's anything you can do here that can help you. The main thing is you need to get at the specificity more, the development more. Okay, so take a look at lesson 1, Toefl Independent Writing Strategies. That's a great lesson. Really good for you right now. How about creating sharply focused thesis statements for the independent writing task? I think that's a good one. Lesson 5.5, how to show depth and complexity of thought. Lesson 5.6, writing the perfect paragraph, I think is a good lesson for you. And then one more, how to make your writing more coherent. That's it. So those are some things. I gave you too many to work on, but I really do think that will help you improve your writing. And then just keep doing. I would do more writing practice. That's what I would do. All right. And I think little by little you will get there. It can take you 15 or 20 writing practice tests before you really feel confident with the writing. And I'm not saying that every single one has to be error corrected like I just did, right? But if you want me to error correct it, you know what the cost is. Just tell me you want me to do that, and then I'll send you a link where you can make that payment. All right? In fact, I will do that right now. All right, thank you. So the good news is you have pretty good control of your language use. You're moving in the right direction with your writing. You need a better thesis statement. You need to develop those body paragraphs with more specificity, and you need more variety to your sentences and maybe longer sentences. I think that's going to help you to develop and become a more proficient writer of academic English.